Alright, before we start this review, I just gotta confess something right here. I had no idea that Stephen Hawking was British until this movie. I mean, I've never heard the man talk, so I wouldn't know, but let's get beyond that. This is my review of The Theory of Everything, starring Eddie Redmayne as Stephen Hawking and Felicity Jones as Jane Wilde Hawking, his first wife. Basically, this movie takes place over the course of around a decade. We start with Stephen Hawking, played by Eddie Redmayne, at Cambridge, where he walks, talks, and then he meets Jane Wilde, played by Felicity Jones, and they start to form a connection. During this time, Stephen gets into an accident, and this leads into the doctors telling him that you have a disease similar to ALS and you're going to die in 2 years. So, I mean, if you know anything about Stephen Hawking, you know that didn't happen. And the rest of the movie is pretty much a love story that's also biographical on Hawking's life and his relationship with Jane Wilde, as they basically try to struggle through Hawking's disease and live the happiest life they can. Now, this is one of those British period pieces, and usually when these come out, they are trying to be Oscar material. They are complete Oscar bait, and most of them are good, but sometimes they try a little too hard to be Oscar worthy, and it's going to make the audience member feel two things. It's either going to make them go, well, that was good, but I don't see Oscar material in it, or it's going to make them go, well, that was so trying to win the Oscar that it just didn't come across as a good movie. Luckily, The Theory of Everything is not one of those movies. This movie is beautifully filmed, has great cinematography, and like with all period pieces, you tend to learn something you didn't know before about the film's subject. Like in this case, I never knew that Stephen Hawking was British. I also really like the way how the film approaches telling the story of Stephen Hawking. Basically, it's kind of like how James Cameron told the story of the sinking of the Titanic. He told it through a love story. And this movie makes you sympathize for Hawking and his ongoing disease by showing how difficult the marriage was between him and his first wife. Not that they fought or anything, but the disease just kept escalating to the point where it was frustrating, or at least how the movie depicts it. And the performances are really great too. Eddie Redmayne, as I mentioned before, plays Stephen Hawking, and he looks the part for one thing, but he also manages to nail Hawking's mannerisms, his facial expressions, and just basically how someone with an ALS-like disease would react. His performance is worthy of an Oscar nomination, and given the fact that the Golden Globes are sometimes precursors to the Oscar nominations, I have a feeling he's going to get it. Will he win? Probably not, but he's still good enough to be nominated. Also good enough to be nominated is Felicity Jones, who plays Jane Wilde. She's fantastic in this too, and delivers the dedicated side to the relationship. She is in love with Stephen Hawking. Once she hears about the disease, she's like, no, I'm going to stick by you, and we're going to pull through this together until the day you die. And if you know history about Stephen Hawking, you kind of know what happens then up to the point where we are now, since this movie is actually based off a book that Jane wrote. But I won't get too much into that, just for spoiler's sake. But as I mentioned before, Felicity Jones is worthy of an Oscar nomination also. She's one of those actresses who I've always loved seeing in things, whether it's something good like Crazy, or just something really bad like The Amazing Spider-Man 2. She manages to do her best in those movies, and I always enjoy seeing her in them. I think she's beautiful, she's cute, and she's just really talented all around. There are a few moments where they play montages throughout the movie. These montages are used to show important events in the couple's life without spending a significant amount of time on them. This is one of the elements of the movie, and probably the only element of the movie that I don't like at all. These montages look like they're pulled out of some cheesy soap opera, right down to using the fuzzy camera lens for some of these things, especially during a marriage sequence. So it just came across as like really cheesy and out of place for a movie that's trying to be as sincere as it is. Felt like a big distraction, but that's probably the only negative that I can think of with this movie, because The Theory of Everything is beautifully filmed, well acted, well directed, It will leave you emotional, and it has a really strong message in the sense that you might be up against all odds, but if you just really put your all into it, you can conquer those odds. And in Stephen Hawking's case, just give a big fuck you to the disease. So, despite those montage sequences, I'm going to say this movie is something you should get off your ass and go see right now. This is one of my favorite movies of the year. And given how great this year has been for movies, this top 10 list is going to be pretty tough to make. But we'll get to it when we get to it. And that's my review for The Theory of Everything. Leave a comment, tell me what you thought of the movie. Like, subscribe, go check out my video blog channel. You can follow me on Twitter at AlexG8462. Go like me on Facebook / The Real Mr. Robinson. And you can follow me on Instagram at The Real Mr. Robinson. Don't forget to check out my written reviews on Geeked Out Nation. This is The Real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one. See you guys later.